Women are still treated worse off, right? So it is bad to get older in America, and it is even worse if you are female.
Hello, and welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. Not Born Yesterday is about playing, working, loving, laughing, and enjoying the possibilities and opportunities of later years. I'm Miriam Goodman, your co-host. Not Born Yesterday examines the problems and solutions of growing older today. We bring you the wisdom and voices of experts in the field of aging and offer tips on how to feel your best, use your lifetime skills and experiences, and make the coming months and years as fulfilling as possible. Along the way, we hope you will share your thoughts and concerns about being older and let us know how we can help.
I'm your co-host, Lynn Winter-Gross. Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village San Francisco. Next Village San Francisco is a local nonprofit providing older adults in the Northeast neighborhood of San Francisco with support to help them age in place, as well as offering cultural, educational, and social activities that keep people connected and engaged with the community and with each other. We all know that we shouldn't tolerate racism or sexism, but why is ageism still considered acceptable? Why is it so easy to overlook ageism as a prejudice? Comedians make jokes about older adults, TV shows, movies, and advertisement mock older adults, and we all laugh. But as more and more of the population ages, some forward-looking thinkers are taking a second look at issues around ageism and pushing for change. Our guest today is Janine Vanderburg, a longtime community activist. Janine Vanderburg is in her encore career, leading Changing the Narrative, a Denver-based organization starting in 2018 to change the way people think, talk, and act about aging and ageism. Her favorite saying is, "We are the leaders we are looking for." Welcome, Janine.
Thanks, Lynn and Miriam. I'm excited to be here with you.
What was it about the image of older people that made you want to do something?
Almost everything. So I think if we look at kind of the popular culture, I think AARP released a study really interestingly in the last few weeks about ageism in advertising. I think we simply have to look at any birthday cards when we're out shopping for a friend or colleague and see all of those images about we're cranky, it's all downhill. There's that image certainly in the workplace that older people aren't willing to learn new things.
Years ago, I had a radio show on feminism, and I remember saying to people, if somebody says something you find sexist, correct them right away. You can do it politely, but you explain it. Does that work with ageism? Do you think that that's the same method, that if you hear it and if you see it, say something?
Miriam, I think that's exactly what we're trying to do. Now, we try to do it in what we call a kinder, gentler calling in instead of calling out. So as opposed to simply, yelling at someone, whoa, that was really ageist. And I'll give you a concrete example. So 2 days ago, an article was published in a Colorado paper about a hiker, age 69, who was found after 2 days of being lost. Now, to me, the headline should have been, wow, this 69-year-old woman hiker, how vital of her, kind of gets through 2 days, etc. But instead, the headline is elderly hiker rescued. Here's an example of the calling in. Someone just gently wrote the author of the article, the reporter, and said, look, I know that you don't write the headlines, but we really think it's important to portray an accurate picture. And we pointed out that the Associated Press, for example, recommends the use of older adult or just being descriptive and not using terms like elderly, senior, and senior citizen. And so it was and then we included a link to the Associated Press style guide, which has adopted new recommendations on language. So it was a kinder, gentler way of saying, yo, don't use the word elderly in your headlines again. But I think you're exactly right. It's very similar to what many of us who are activists did in the 60s. And now in our 60s, we have an opportunity to do it again around another issue.
So many of us get the message that older people are a drain on society. And reframing seems to say, no, we have a lot to contribute to society. So how are we getting that message out? What are the strengths that older people bring to society as opposed to always we're such a drain on society?
Lynn, so thank you for bringing that up. That's one of my pet peeves in this whole demographic disaster and silver tsunami, right? Like somehow we are this incredible burden. And when you look at the actual data, AARP has done a lot of work on what is called the longevity economy. And it's basically the economic contributions of people age 50 and over. And if you took the economic contributions of people age 50 and over in the United States alone, that would make the longevity economy, the basically the collective economic contributions of people age 50 and over, the third largest economy in the world after the United States and China, right? Wow. Simply the contributions. But we don't want it to just be about economic contributions, that somehow our value is only measured by money. We know that, for example, during the pandemic, think of the number of, retired doctors and nurses who came out of retirement to help out. Yeah. The number of grandparents who, took over care of their grandchildren so that their children could continue working when schools were closed. When we think of how most nonprofits are run in the United States, they couldn't exist without contributions of people age 50, 60 and over who are often using their time to volunteer. So what's collective, and this is what's so important about a podcast like yours, we need to keep raising that message and reinforcing it. One of the things we encourage people to do is to tell the stories of older people who are, in fact, involved with the community. I know that you all are involved with the villages. This is one of the reasons that I love the villages movement so much. Not only do older people show up for mutual support, but also in intergenerational activity, tutoring, mentoring, supporting others. And those are the stories that we need to elevate and lift. And that's the way we're going to change the narrative. If we don't tell the story, other people are going to tell the story about us. So it's up to us to tell that story.
Have you found that there are differences in how older adults are treated in different ethnic groups or gender makes a difference?
So, let me tackle gender first so that we know generally, I think no surprise of us who, came up in the feminist movement, women are still treated worse off, right? So it is bad to get older in America, and it is even worse if you are female getting older in America, right? And a lot of it has, to do with all of the things, like appearance and expectations of women and that kind of thing. We also know that women are worse off financially because many times we were those who stepped out of the workforce to take care of children, step out of the workforce to take care of older family members. Caregiving roles are still predominantly female. So that leaves women worse off financially. We do know that some cultures absolutely appreciate getting older and the wisdom that elders bring to a community and families, etc., far more than others. But we certainly know that in U.S. culture, generally, that is not the case, and that the cultural narrative in the United States is pretty much it's all downhill and very little value. And having said that, because I know part of your podcast is about challenges, and we've talked a lot about challenges, I think the huge opportunity now is that people are recognizing it. There are more and more things like podcasts, like you're doing, to elevate issues like this. There's more of an understanding, and I think the pandemic actually in a really strange way highlighted this, the contributions and how badly the contributions of older people were needed. I think during the pandemic, there was absolutely an increased awareness of ageism.
We like to give our listeners action ideas. We referred to the 60s earlier when we said that we thought we could all change the world. Now we want to change the world again. Can you give us some action ideas, what people can do today, tomorrow, next week to change the way older adults are treated and even depicted in the media and generally in society?
Yeah, absolutely. So first thing is we all need to educate ourselves about ageism. One of the things the research has showed is most people don't even understand that ageism exists or that it's a thing. And ageism is basically, it's nothing more, it's stereotyping, it's prejudice, it's discrimination based on age. So one, we need to educate ourselves about it so that we understand it and we understand how it happens and where it happens in work and in healthcare. And then we need to educate ourselves and make ourselves feel comfortable with speaking up and speaking out about it, kind of like you suggested earlier, when we see things. So, for example, if I walk into a store and I see a really ageist birthday card that depicts an older person in decline, or, with jokes about being cranky or sagging or whatever it is, I want to go up to that store owner and say, I'm sure you didn't mean to insult me and my friends, but I patronize this store and I would like to see you carry, cards that celebrate aging and getting older. So I think we speak up in that way. I think we write letters to the editor. I think we let our legislators know we should be following, no matter what community we're in, follow what local policy and legislation is doing. And we should be speaking up to our elected officials and letting them know we want them to deal with workplace age discrimination. We want them to strengthen age discrimination laws. So I think for a lot of us, it's speaking up and speaking out. And I really want to mention, and those all seem like big things, right? But a not big thing that all of us can do is we can pay attention to our own language. We can just, if we find ourselves catching ourselves saying, I'm having a senior moment, we might just stop and say, we're not going to say that. Instead, we're going to think, I got a lot of stuff on my mind. I'm a busy woman. Instead of saying,
that's a good one.
I'm too old to do this, let's try it.
I think one of the things that you're saying that's so interesting is the external changes that need to be made, but also the internal changes that we see ourselves as getting older and therefore we can't do A, B, C, or D versus no. But let's look at it differently.
Yeah. Lynn, absolutely. And I think it's critical. I think it always starts with us. You mentioned at the outset, one of my favorite sayings is, we are the leaders we've been waiting for. And we all know as good leaders, right, it all starts with ourselves. So we need to look at ourselves first and say, in what ways am I being ageist? And then, from there, we're better positioned to kind of tackle, some of the external ageism, whether it's between individuals or whether it's larger on a society or policy level.
I agree. That sounds easier than it is. But my daughter and son-in-law both work in advertising, and I've tried to talk to them about ageism in advertising. And the first reaction was, well, everybody creative is younger. We don't see it that way. And my son-in-law told me an example that was just shocking. He said before the first Obama campaign, one of his friends made an ad showing an older person going through TSA at an airport, and that the person says, you have to take off your shoes, and the man gets confused and starts taking off his pants. And so the message then goes on to, older people vote, you better register yourself. And I thought, oh my God, how awful that is. But they thought, isn't that funny? Isn't that cute? It's going to get younger people to register to vote.
Right. Well, and Miriam, I think, you've highlighted, one of the reasons we have such ageism is advertising is one, I think people in advertising don't recognize the power of the longevity economy and the money that older people have. Paul Irving, who's the head of the Millikan Institute at Stanford, talks about, and if any of you have children, grandchildren, right, you look at all the fancy strollers. I just bought my daughter, who is going to have a baby in November, this very elaborate fancy stroller. But are there fancy walkers or any of like that? No, there aren't. So people don't use that sort of creative design. And part of the issue is, as we get older, we're not represented in those industries, right? And so I think, to me, smart advertising industries that in advertising shops that want their clients to tap into that longevity economy, because it's a huge slice of America's gross domestic product. If they want to tap into that money, then they're going to bring on people who can bring the perspective of people our age and who just say, I didn't think that was that funny. Maybe you ought to think about that and, think about it differently instead. But when people aren't represented, it's like any other kind of representation, right? If people aren't sitting at the table, the way they're represented is basically inaccurate. And in this case, absolutely ageist. And I recall that ad and I was infuriated.
Janine, I wanted to thank you so much. Is there anything that we're missing that you want to add?
I kind of want to leave with this, and People often, when we have criticized birthday cards, said, "Oh, don't you have a sense of humor?" or that kind of thing, or called us snowflakes. And I always share this card that one of my daughters gave me for Mother's Day, which I thought was both humorous, but it's a way to both be humorous and honor age. And I think, Miriam, given your background, you'll appreciate this. The card says, "Mom, thank you for teaching me about the glass ceiling." Pause. And then how to swing a hammer. And so it was a fun way, it's a humorous card, a clever card, but of my daughter honoring, what I've been able to share with her over time. And I think if we could approach not only birthday cards, but overall narrative change. We don't have to be terribly serious, but we need to make sure that the message gets across that as we age, we have value and that ageism is wrong.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was Janine Vanderburg of Changing the Narrative. Thank you, Janine.
Thank you. This was so fun.
You don't have to be an older adult to realize that scammers are all around us. And perhaps because of the isolation created by the pandemic, they are more active than ever. But older people do seem to be more easily exploited. So be aware of anyone who claims to be a government or bank official. Never return a call from someone who claims to be an IRS agent. The IRS will never call you on the phone. And even if the number on your caller ID shows that it's coming from the IRS, do not respond. They may tell you to wire money right away or you will go to jail. Hang up right away. The scammers want your money and your personal information. And even if they seem nice and sincere and helpful, just hang up when they call. Close the door if they come to your house, and delete their emails from your computer. And never open or download an attachment they send. Your computer can be damaged and they can gain access to all your information, especially your bank accounts and credit card. There are even scams that can lock your phone and steal data from that device. Common scams right now are fake COVID testing kits and worse, fake COVID cures.
Here are some signs of a scam. The caller may use words like urgent or official to pressure you to act quickly. They will tell you to buy gift cards, debit cards, or to use wire transfer to send money. Do not answer any questions about where you live. Don't give out your Social Security number or your Medicare number. Right now, Medicare scams are widespread. I get a robocall saying they're from Medicare almost every day. Ignore such calls, even if the caller seems chatty or sincere. And if you have questions related to scams or feel you're a target, call the AARP Fraud Watch Network at 877-908-3360.
That's our podcast for today. Our thanks to Janine Vanderburg of Changing the Narrative. You can learn more about Next Village SF by going to their website, www.nextvillagesf.org, or by calling 415-888-2868. And thanks to you for listening. We would love to hear what you would like us to discuss. Please contact us at notbornyesterdaypodcast@nextvillagesf.org.
Be well, stay strong, and remember, you weren't born yesterday. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.